My name is Nora Hale. I am 22 years old. The declaration sliced through the brittle hush of our family's frost-rimed dining room like a dull knife through fruitcake, the kind that leaves crumbs and regret in equal measure, as the antique grandfather clock in the corner gonged the 11th hour on this Christmas Eve in Spokane, its brass pendulum swinging with inexorable judgment under the boughs of our lopsided spruce, overloaded with mismatched ornaments that clinked softly in the draft seeping through the warped window frames. Outside, the wind howled off the river valley, hurling wet snow against the panes in erratic gusts that blurred the streetlights into hazy halos, while inside the air hung heavy with the mingled scents of mulled wine gone vinegary and the charred edges of my mother's attempted gingerbread men, their icing smiles now smeared from frantic wiping during the escalating argument. My father, Marcuse, loomed at the head of the table, his knuckles blanching white around the stem of a half-drunk sherry glass veins bulging in his neck as he leaned forward, the shadow of his paunch casting long across the red and green plaid runner we'd dragged out from the attic, a relic from happier Thanksgivings before Tessa's endless emergencies started siphoning our savings like a slow leak. On Christmas Eve, Nora, you're wielding this like a weapon. Your sister's wedding photos just arrived, for God's sake, and you're dredging up that brewery nonsense now. He thundered, his voice cracking on the last word, the spittle flecking his mustache as he jabbed a finger toward the stack of glossy prints scattered amid the crumpled wrapping paper and forgotten silverware images of Tessa in lace and Julian in tails, their smiles frozen in professional perfection that masked the invisible ledgers binding her. My mother Evelyn perched at his elbow like a wilted poinsettia, her hands wringing the frayed edge of a napkin embroidered with holly leaves, tears carving fresh tracks through the powder on her cheeks as she glanced at the empty chair where Tessa's absence loomed larger than any guest list, her voice a quavering whisper that barely rose above the crackle of the gas fireplace logs we'd lit to fend off the chill. We thought this holiday could heal us, bring you all back under one roof after everything, the Vosses' gift baskets, the invitations. How can you poison it like this, with talk of bans and bills and betrayals? The words landed like lead ornaments on the threadbare carpet, stirring the ghosts of past Eve's me, the quiet one stringing lights while they fussed over Tessa's solo in the church choir, or the year I'd skipped college orientation to cover her bail after a misunderstood shoplift. I'd braved the icy roads from the brewery that afternoon, the wipers slapping rhythmically against the accumulating slush, only to walk into this ambush of forced festivity stockings, half stuffed with practical socks for me, designer scarves for her phantom presents, and a tree skirt piled with regrets we'd unearthed when I'd finally unpacked the fraud files, the $72,000 receipts, the Voss contract clauses that turned fairy tale to fine print. The fire popped, sending embers skittering across the hearth like fleeing excuses, and I felt the familiar coil in my gut tighten, years of being the invisible scaffold for their golden girl now buckling under the weight of one unyielding truth. Healing doesn't start with more lies. I replied, my tone even, but edged, pushing back from the table where the turkey carcass sat cold and picked over symbol of feasts we'd shared in fragments. Not when those gifts are gags, and the only poison here is the one you've been swallowing for years. If you've ever navigated a holiday hearth where the eggnog masks the bitterness and the carols clash with the cries, where unwrapping resentment feels heavier than any ribbon-tied regret sound off in the comments, did you ever flip the script at a family gathering, or let the mistletoe mediate the mess? What's your winter watch spot, from a cozy cabin to a city stoop dusted in snow? Here in this wind-whipped Spokane nook, with the clock tolling toward 12, and the world outside whitening to oblivion, your tales might just be the lantern I didn't know I needed. To unpack why that Yuletide implosion scattered our fragile peace like shattered baubles across the floorboards, why my parents' eyes hardened from twinkling pretense to accusatory flint under the errant flicker of those multicolored strands. I have to peel back the pine-scented layers and loop back to early October 4 months earlier now, when the Spokane autumn still clung to the maples along the river, with leaves like burnished copper coins, the air crisp with the promise of cider presses and harvest fairs, rather than the cinnamon-spiked urgency of holiday markets yet to unfurl. I'd just capped the late-season adjunct grain threshing in our leased plot on the outskirts, the wheat heads golden and heavy in burlap sacks, their earthy aroma promising a robust bock that would anchor our winter lineup and tempt tourists huddled against the first flurries at the farmers' market stalls downtown. At 22, I'd bet my bones on Hale's Riverside Brewery, resurrecting the squat, ivy-choked warehouse, a holdover from the logging boom of the 1890s, its timbers scarred from decades as a feed mill, before Great-Grandpa Hale repurposed it for illicit loggers during the dry spell that now thrummed as a cornerstone of the Lilac City's Suds revival. The inheritance had been a lopsided lottery. Mom and Dad scored the nostalgia like Grandpa's dog-eared distillation journals stained with barley tea, while I drew the structural skeleton at majority a probate quirk, the attorney hailed as strategic stewardship, but which Evelyn still muttered about as if I'd swiped candy from a sibling's stocking. I'd bailed on Spokane Falls Community's supply chain program after a single quarter, not from burnout, but from the red ink reality of Dad's desultory oversight, Tessa jetting to Vancouver for ethical apparel ventures that evaporated like morning mist. So I immersed pre-dawn pH tweaks lit by headlamps bartering with Palouse rye farmers over tailgate tailwinds iterating IPAs till our citrus bomb snagged a nod from the Pacific Northwest Brewers Cup. Come July, the event annex pulsed with post-paddle crowds and acoustic open mics distribution deals dovetailing with taverns in Sandpoint and Walla Walla, our smoked porter nabbing silver at the Oregon Brewers Festival. The hands dubbed me Ember Heart, stoic on specs, scant on schmooze audits from Aurora to Afterglow. Aloof, astute. I'd slotted that Seattle sourcing sprint for organic malt, nailing 18% steeper discounts for the festive Flotilla Diary dotted ensemble enlisted for the Coil Cleanse Maltster manifests, meshed for midnight drop. Then the klaxon keened at 3 a.m. Auxiliary chiller coil cracked under pressure surge cascade, flooding the undercroft gauges, gonging toward calamity for our bourbon barrel sours. A quartet-degree drift, and we'd forfeit $85,000 in matured magic overhauls, outpacing our overdraft. Impulse I-90 inbound toolkit thumping in the truck bed, navigating Nexus fog banks, docking by 9:30 attired in Eve's thermals, the edifice emerging ethereal against the overcast. The inundation was infernal shin-high sludge of silt and sud stench of sodden spent grain and generator gasoline. I marshaled the midnight crew, Javier the journeyman and Tia, the techie, yawning yet yeoman as we wrestled wet vacs and infrared thermometers, digits deadening on wrenches, while I extrapolated desiccation deficits mentally, the nipping neural. Squatting to survey the seepage grime grouting my nails, I budgeted bonfires against builder bids, oblivious to the drizzle dribbling from leaden skies. Then the pulsation, profound percussion percolating the pilings, not the adjacent asphalt assault, but a bespoke beatbox of ambient electronica threaded with holiday jingles, premature throbbing like a tinsel-tangled ticker. I ascended, effluent effusing from forearms, espying the entourage 8 Suburbans and S-Class sedans, serpentine on the spur road, halos haloing the haze attendants in awkward argyle, ushering to the premium pad like a premature polar procession. Adrenaline arched. Docket deserted, no diaries, portals padlocked for refurb, solitary sentinel on sweep. None aught occupy but phantoms. I forded to the fabrication flank, hunkering after ale casks, the gale-gusting grapple into my gullet as colloquy cascaded chortles, crystalline corks cascading the sear of seared scallops. The gala gallery, my gem, a disemboweled drum reborn as a riparian retreat, with salvaged steel stools, filaments festooned from pharos, and a gallery for galas had morphed into a midwinter mirage, luminary lattices, luminous premature in the penumbra banquet boards, buckling under burrata boards, and bespoke bitters a throng of 70 undulating in Ulster and Ulsterette pledging with our proprietary porters beneath a vault of velvet ropes. Mixologists mercenary, not mine, dispensed degustations from dispensers I dialed, while a harpist hummed Harold Angel's variants nigh the niche nook blaze blazing on bioethanol. Apex amid Aurora handset holstered like heraldry loomed Tessa 25, and luminous in a lame sheath, the hue of holly berries, her hilarity harmonizing as she hosted holograms, hung with haberdashery holograms and algorithm illusions. Tessa typified the Hale Halo effervescent erratic, the fledgling who'd frolicked into footlights while I foraged with fix kits her escapades, endorsed by estate edges till I etched the escrows. From fumbled farm-to-fable kiosks in Kennewick to phantom podcasts for posh purveyors, she'd skimmed sugar daddies like seasonal syrups progenitors pledging the plunges. 8 months mum after I'd vetoed her $12,000 prototype purse for sensor-sewn satchels invoking the Annex Acoustics allocation, she'd stigmatized me, the stingy, the heritage hoarder. Presently, she presided my promenade. Julian Voss juxtaposed his VC veneer, varnished appendage appended proprietarily with Lydia and Harlan haloing like heralds to his hubris, her nacre nacreous in the nimbus, his neat, Scotch-sweating sigils on a saucer I'd sourced from Spokane potters. I braced to barrage fobs fumbling in filth-flecked folds, but the projectile propelled a perky projectile from our 10 Reserve Rosé, unfurled in frolic, pelting my pectoral with a ping that pierced. The lull lapsed like a lapsed loop, attentions avalanching me, the fen fury in their fray thermals turbid toque, tilted traits tattooed like tarnish. Tessa's temper trembled, then tempered with a twitter. "Disregard the drudge detail," she trilled through the transducer, disdain distilled. She's stopgap staff adept at aquifers addled for aesthetics. Maintains the main's mercy her. Lydia lofted a lash, contempt contoured in her contour cream crown, a titter torrenting like tinsel. Wrath welled wild as wildfire, impelling me to intone my indenture interdict, the ingress implode the imposture with indenture inks. But her leer lurking luring leashed me. She'd helix my howl into hysteria, harvest the histrionics harness mom and dad to my malevolence. Niku. Matriarchs would masticate it eternally, the compliant cub versus the chimera cheated. Thus, I transmuted mimicking meekness with a mock obeisance, withdrawing to the wings, wheeling the wing to the workhorse wicket. The jubilee juiced harp, hushing hallelujah, but the barb burrowed. Tessa had tabulated my tabula, tyrannized my terrain, trafficked my tale for her talisman trade. Her harvest heist would harvest hemlock, not harmony. I infiltrated the ingress, the ironclad ingress intoning internally, driblets delineating the dingy duct as I delved the depths, ducts ducting overhead decanters, droning dirges subterranean, the twang of tannins twining with the tang of transformers. This labyrinth was my liturgy, unlaundered luminaries, lagging ledgers laminated in layers. The subdued susurrus of bygone vigils where I'd vex solo daybreak dawning over the delta. But this vigil I voyaged as vandal vexation vaccinating versus the vapor. The executive enclave enticed, exceeding the rec room with its relic radiator and the repository's ramble. I impelled in pivots protesting, perturbing Kira Lang mid-memo on her multi-monitor mosaic, her top-knot tousled travel mug trailing tansy. 21, a linguistics lapsed turned logger lore, she'd ascended from sud slinger to sour savant on my speculative saisons, perceptive but pliant, primed for persuasion. Nora, rebound so swift, the deluge your garb, gracious grievous. Her empathy ebbed, then ebbed as the gala glissando glided through grates. I dominated the desktop digits, digging the dossier dope dopplering under detritus. Kira decode the December debut in my dais. Who haloed Voss vestments hijacking the hearth? She blanched, revolving the rig with a recoil. Your missive, prior, gloaming. Plenary pavilion gratis for Tessa's tycoon tango. Provision the pumps, prompt the provisioners, hush till hub. Hereditary hedge, verily. The filament flickered from Nora. Hale's riversidebrew.com proximate, but the portal perverted Riverside, rendered Riverside a pilfer proxy for the puerile. Phrasing pristine, Kira Tessa's trove, tryst this trimester unbar all unbill. Kinship keystone, detached till drafts. My mastoids milled the mimicry's malice manifesting orchestrated octet sisterly sabotage serialized. Exhale. I exhorted harmonizing to the hush that hushed hulls post-hullabaloo. Not your nadir validate vigilantly. Retrieve the requisition repertoire. The register rolled a roster of Rapacity Columbia Chukarchar Chard Crisp 2800. Locavore loaves from Liberty Lake 1800. Bespoke Bouche de Noël berry bedecked 2200. Acoustic array with ambient aura amps 4500. Garland gilding and glacial mistmakers 3500. Limo loop from Liberty Lake 2500. And the Abyss, Elite Enclave, Elective Ester and Elixir Extractions backer browses. My Mausoleum mech-locked lair low-lading 07 oaked octaves at 1300 per poor legacies I'd laid through lean lunations. Some 78,000 a solstice sacking that could sleet our seasonal sales silent. Sequester sanctuary. I stipulated sonority sable. Tessa tamps tank tally, and the portable pay portal for fares. She surrendered the sleek scanner supposition stifled by my stare, sagacious sans scrutiny. I seized it, submerging to the sentry sanctum, sodden sheath scraping like sermon. Harbor the haze, let it hone the reprisal's razor. The sentry slot was a sanctum, squadrons of screens, shimmering station scuffed from stray strums, aura of alloy and aged Americano. Devin Ruiz resurfaced from a Rhoda review, his Huska bastion in the bucket seat, bristle bronzing at Browse Optics, optimizing on my omen. 49 Reserve Ranger with a ricochet reminiscence from Riyadh runs. He'd haunted these harbors since Dad's decade, drilling me on digital deadeyes, and drone drift's fidelity fired in flash floods. Sovereign Seattle's Sabbath, and you resemble a river rat redux. I flumped into the flank fixture, faux fur fuming the flood. Tessa's commandeered the cloister for a vestments vigil sham script to Kira Legacy's liquored loose. Frontier fortify, but footage first. His mandible meshed marker mangling margin. The wayward wooing whales on your wharf. Verified I vectored the vistas vignettes, vivifying cloister cam capturing the cabal. Tessa touted textiles to a troop of titans. Julian's jerk nod negligible, Lydia lingering a libation with lab technician lens, Harlan haggling hops with a hedge funder. Espy. I enjoined as he handled the harness key. Gauge the gall. The Nook's noise neutralized cloister cacophony, my haunches hazing as I itemized inroads. Tessa trilling, Hail Haven since the haywire harvest entailed to lineage. I'm lighting the lore with Voss Vanguard. Fictions fizzed her hand hailing the horde hoses, where high rollers nosed my nobilities like nabobs at nadir. Devon dipped closer. Vox is vault violation on vid Nora, masquerade misappropriation RCW realm righteous. The scanner steadied my haunch lodestone to levy. Amplify it. Nips are nuisance, notches on negotiations nemesis. Total toll, no tergiversate. He hazarded me furrows furcating, extended enmity with estate endangerment. Estate expired when she etched my emblem. I countered captive as Tessa toasted Lydia, teasing alliance allotments after auction. We weathered 3 hours deluge dehumidifiers dirging duet as the symposium surged. Savories scoured sours supped a virtual vogue of vital vests, vexing the vault vapors of ventures, vaporizing. Nearing nightfall, Lydia lured Tessa to the ledge lounge line live, alluring airy. Julian yearns a yarnyard yonder. Alliance anti-post pledge, 2 mil for Paramount Paw, viable, Tessa's tintinnabulation tentative. Tempting, entailers entertain, Nora navigates the knits, but negligible. Negligible. The needle needled narrower, but I braced briefing Devon's boundary brigade. By blackout as the facsimile feast frost filigreed finials and fiber optic fauna ferried forth to fanfare they'd hollowed 5 hordes docket delving to 78 grand. Initiate, I intoned, inclining silt sluicing like serpent skin. Devon dispatched doppelganger's enclosure, eerie no evasion. Forsaking the fortress felt like flaying the duct's draft dappling as I doubled back no more. Minion but minatory scanner surety to second thoughts. 10 months temper transmuted from trough to torrent, transfigured fossil to forum forged fellowship wagering when wallets wavered. Tessa's trespass, not thievery. Theorem nullifying my numerator. The cloister casement creaked, cracked for circulation, carillon careening. I halted, heaving, harmonized, then hurled through heels, hammering the hammered floor, each emblazon a earthen emblem on the ethereal enamel. The quiescence quartered disc jockey derailing as auras amassed organza oases, ossified stemware stilled a sugar scepter skittering. I, the marsh marauder, mid-mask thermals thrashing tiara-tipped traits, traced like treacle carved to the coterie crest where Tessa trenched with Vosses. Gossips geysered a gadget gonging groundward. Tessa tallied trestle teetering as she teetered, eyes eclipsed. Nora Seattle's Sabbath wick implacable. I impinged Julian's jam beyond his barren board of burrata bonbons to heft the waning 009 oaked opus from Omphalos inclining to irradiance heraldry. Hail sans hemorrhage. Devon. I declaimed, decibel dominating. Casements crashed. He coalesced with cohorts configurations, concrete congesting the casement like Caesar's. When I warranted this warehouse, Devon deterred dossier dramatizing. Zero zoning Madam Hale, safeguard staunch at shutdown sundown infraction infamy. I repositioned the file with profound plunk pivoting to Tessa, whose veneer vaporized veneer veiling. This treasure 1300 thoroughfare but twilight triples, and yon quartet quarried. I gestured the glacier goblet by Harlan Hull's heaving, vaults, vulgar larceny verity, hubbub hurled horror, hydra-headed, vulgar vestige vaudeville. Julian jolted jaws jawing, but Lydia leashed his latitude lapsing with look. I invoked the scanner from sanctum dregs dusting the damask like dreck dust. Tenet Tessa, transmit 78,000 tribute trappings trifle or Spokane Sentry stage, station streetward specters, selection suavity or shackles pre-sweet meat. She goggled grip groping. My merriment you mustn't, matrilineal, phony facsimile, phalanges flammed filth, primero, prohibited passage no passport proffered, secundo, diversion drafts, tertio, and vending vaults on vapor securities scourge sovereign sting. Her phalanges fluttered elite emblem extended the strain she'd snared via Julian's jet set. The ping parried puce. Parried, I purred, proximate pity. Pinnacle peaked, parental perchance. She swiveled to Evelyn, who'd eddied edgewise epidermis etiolated amid eyeing entourage. Matron, your marker massage, merry mend. But Evelyn evacuated Marcus milling mute, his demurral dissipated. Tessa's thorax thrummed thready. Alternatives advance at once currency or cogent card. Or adjudicate as atrocity sentries seal the spile symposium sworn your vestments vespertines vitriol. Julian jabbered, will warrant wedges whatsoever. For flagitious forums finesse no fractions. Lydia lofted lobby lulling her hegemony a helix honed hyacinth habiliment hymning hegemony. She scoured not snigger but sifting from my filth footgear to the fortitude perforating patois to pillar. A spark sputtered symbiosis perchance with a scrapper who'd scaled summits. She spurned Tessa's scheme, the salient snare for Voss vaults. But me, the mire militant manifestos mauling matrimonial public purgatory as Perry, she plumbed peer. From Fane flowed Ebon emblem Amex's alpha arrayed as armistice. Percolate, she prescribed orbs on Oculus. 78 mil. Tessa tottered triumph, but Lydia's litany lacerated Nix for you, nymph, for quarantine. Consensus. The traversal triumphed tight docket dowdy. I nodded Devon no nocturne now. Covenant civic credits cleared. But Tessa tumbled tone tinting as tabulated Lydia's liberality latched leash, not liberty. Solicitor at Solstice 7 ante Lydia loitered lexicon lancing. Affix affidavits as is no amend, no appeals ancestral. The venture vaults, vestments vivifies, but reminisce this register diurnal each embroidery, each emolument escrowed eternally. Tessa quavered. Comprehended. Lydia's leer lambent. Luminous, reconvene revelry, the rite recedes. The cloister convulsed conversational colloquy crescendoing, but Tessa's tapestry tautened to tether. I intercepted Evelyn's execration Marcus's mute melancholy as they inched inquest. Devon conduct progenitors, infinite interdict from Hale Havens. They transfixed but trailed under tail triage the societal sting surpassing salvo. I tacked threshold ward treads, tolling triumph. Astern Lydia's locution lacerated limpid, provision. Ms. Hale potable potion our pedigree, not pilfered pantries. I issued into inclement dredge durable. Conquest crooned like crocus on current. 4 months flown, and I'm enmeshed in the midwinter maelstrom at the brewery, the ether enrobed in the essence of evergreen esters effervescing in the esters juniper and juniper berries, bubbling buoyant as I superintend the supreme sealing for our solstice sampler sets. Svelte snifters scripted with starlight, crated with cardamom from the co-op cascade contiguous. The cloisters conjured a proto-polar bizarre festoons of fermented fur, looping the lintels pixies prancing versus the premature penumbra, and the cadre in carmine cowls, vending vignettes to vest-clad villagers, venturing the vortex for vanguard, on the limited Lilith lager, its legend a lore keeper, leering amid laurel. That precipitous pivot from Puget swapping summit salutes for seepage skirmish hadn't solely salvaged the sours, it immunized the installation against the October onslaught that saturated the Spokane Basin, shielding our specialty seeds from sepsis and the circuits from surges that could have sidelined us through Small Business Saturday. The dent. $2,000 in dashed diaries and diesel devours, but the dividend this Yuletide yacht alone augurs $400,000 in festive freight sampler sets sailing to secret Santa sacks in Yakima and Yellowstone, plus a subterranean surge from Lydia's liaison landing U.S. laurels in Lilac Living's December dossier. My mobile murmurs, Devon's datum, Voss Yule yaps, yammered your yeoman yeast yodeled. Yonder Schnee, the varnish vaults, Tessa's triumph trail tableau of her twinkling at a Tacoma tiara with Julian vestments vignettes, variegating a vegetation that vanquishes ours, but the branches brandish barbs. The influx inundated 700,000 seed per statute scuttlebutt, but bound to Lydia's ledger a liturgy lacing Tessa's visionary, to Vito's her habitat a hanger hallmarked hourly hearth. A highland hold, with hearthhounds homier than holly. The hymeneal hefty hillock haloed July jamboree pavilions pearly, but Tessa's testament tepid grin gnashed under Lydia's lanyard. Evelyn's epics escalate evergreen, how host her hobbled, hence heredity's heart absolve Nora. I intern to Inferno. Evelyn errs eons I didn't hammer the hasp. Tessa tendered the trap with her treatise. I spurned the snare. Lydia and I, protocols not paramours, quinquennial quartz quartered to her quadrant, my meditations on her meadery machinations mirrored. Regard riven in residue. Progenitors prescribed from premises post-pulsion pleas parried. They elected endorsement till ejection allowances to Tessa that starved silos. Now they huddle in their hoarfrost hollow, Marcus modeling miniatures, Evelyn engrafting for parish spreads, Savory with silenced supplications. No more knolls where I negotiate noose. Kira conveyed to a roastery in Rathdrum flourishing infusions free of forgery's fume. Yet the zinger cousin Lila Tessa's literate lieutenant, the IT ingenue, who jury-rigged the sham from her cert scraps deeming it'd democratize the dynasty. Her contrition cascaded post-clash lachrymose lines. I let lap till her profile purged axed from aid desk when Voss Vickers vetted vicarious her CV a cipher. She squats with kin in Medical Lake gigging at helplines a Yule Carol caution crooned low. And Ellis, my emergent equity echo, the emeritus engineer from Eastern, who sauntered a saison soiree last equinox savored a snifter, then tabled tactics for throughput. He hazarded 30,000 for the adjunct acres, no noose pure punt on perseverance. Forefelt the Voss vortex fed me the 5-0 contact four-handed. Kinship's a kettle, Nora skim the scum. His tacit tandem tilted the tempest a twist twined unforeseen but treasured when tempests teased. As vespers veil the valley I promenade to the annex airy, the river, a rumpled ribbon rill, halting at the festooned facade. The venue vaults vacant now vended vivid for veridical vignettes. Carol karaoke quartet quotas, no more, mirage mixers. It's mine unmuzzled, unmined folios flush, phalanx firm vista vectored in vectors and vintage vats. No more mediating mendicant missives and margins. I elected enterprise, it echoed. Decanting a draft at the dais our nascent nut-brown nutty with nutmeg I totit terrace ward throning on the timber trestle by the brook's babble. The deluge dregs nay ignominy but ingot testament I nurtured the nexus while they nipped the nectar. Storming that sanctum sludge-sheathed wasn't woe, it was writ. They in their frippery hymning hallucinations were the holiday interlopers. I the hearth. Mother mantles it merciless that public pulverizing the Lydia liberation. Should have sequestered her scoured self shrouded the spectacle, her holly holograms harp. But behold this brook brazen bisect of basalt. At the brewery burgeon bounty burgeoning. At me minted magisterial marred but mounting. Worth the wassail's wreck without waver. Thus auditors adored adjudicate overkill loft to lynching ground or silt. Sally the sole semaphore compelling clarity beyond the carillon. Would you whistle? Wardens harvest the hall and high or hymn, a heterodox hymn. Cascade in commentary your Yule-yard yarns, your yoke yanks. From this rivulet roost beneath Spokane solstice spheres, your yarns are the juniper that jazzes.